Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. Everyone out there knows that on my business card it says intelligent conversation. And that is what we get every time we get this guy to get together with us. He has a new book, and it feels like he writes a book a year. I don't know how he does it, especially at his young age where he could be doing all sorts of things. Pat Williams is the Senior Vice President of the NBA's Orlando Magic. 50 years of pro sports experience. That's as long as I've been on the planet here, and more than 100 books. That's 2 books a year, Pat. You're ahead of the pace. Character carved in stone. Do you ever run out of ideas to write books to inspire me, Pat?
Well, Nestor, you never know where a book idea is going to come. So here's what happened. Several years ago, I was invited to go up to West Point and speak to the Army sports teams, men and women's teams, and their coaches. And after I finished that, they gave me a tour of the campus, which is, by the way, is a very powerful experience. We ended up in a little park on the campus looking out over the Hudson River. And I looked to my right, and I noticed there was a bench there. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting, a nice place to sit down and rest. But then I looked further, and I saw more benches, and I counted them, and there were 12 of them. I said, boy, that's a lot of people doing rest. But then, for some reason, I looked at the end of that first bench, and I saw a word that was carved into the stone. And I walked around to the other end of the bench, and that same word was carved on the other end. And I thought, I wonder what the other benches have. So I started looking at them, and they had a different word carved into their bench. And I looked at all 12 of them, and there were 12 different words. And the words were like courage and dedication and dignity and integrity, loyalty, trust, those kind of words. And then I thought, well, Nestor, there's got to be a backstory here. And sure enough, there was. The class of 1935 at West Point had donated these benches as a school class gift, and they had come up with these 12 words because they felt those were the words that West Point students needed to learn and understand and have carved into their souls, as future military leaders.
Well, here we go. Let's go through them. Compassion, courage, dedication, determination, dignity, discipline, integrity, loyalty, perseverance, responsibility, service, and trust. Wow. There have been books written on all 12 of those, Pat. I'm sure that's your next project, right?
Well, Nestor, you hit that. Those are the 12 words that were there. But my immediate thought was, this has got to be the best kept secret in the country. I mean, I'd never heard of this, and I'm a constant student and reader. I thought, I've never heard of this. And I then thought, boy, that has book potential. Well, the publisher agreed, and we decided to write a chapter on each one of these words, and then try and find a West Point graduate who we thought best modeled or exemplified that particular word. So that's what we did.
Well, I tell you what, you put exhaustive research into each one of these little gems. I've written 4 books. You're over 100 now. I don't know how he does it. Character carved in stone, the 12 core virtues of West Point that build leaders and produce success. I think anytime there's a leader, and Pat, I mean, I've seen you speak to our Accelerant group here in Baltimore. You go around the world speaking to people about stuff, and you say, well, that's when the education begins, is when you've learned everything, right? And here you are sitting on these benches, and I'll tell you, I've been down to Annapolis many, many times. I don't think you can spend – I covered the Naval Academy football team when Elliot Uzelac was the coach, and, we get to the Army-Navy game from time to time around here, and I think anytime you're on the military, on that soil, you would say, well, what are they teaching? What are the lessons to be learned there? What's the handbook they hand you there? And sometimes even these things go lost for years years until someone like you comes together and finds these 12 benches to put these incredible words together. But that story, it's almost a century old, right? I mean, almost 85 years ago that class came out.
Yeah,
right?
and that's why I said, Nestor, that I couldn't believe that I had never heard of this. Probably most people haven't. And I probably thought that most West Point students over the years had not hung out, looking at those benches. So that's why I thought it was important to write this book. And it's been out about 2 weeks, Nestor, and we're very encouraged. We're beginning to get some really positive feedback, and I think we may have hit a nerve here. So that's a brief background. And by the way, your mention of Annapolis inspires me to do that same kind of a tour of the campus at Annapolis at the Naval Academy. That's on my checklist of things to do.
Pat Williams has been a great guest with us over the years. He's written a book with Jim Denny, forward by Coach Mike Krzyzewski. The book is Character Carved in Stone, and these principles. It's interesting you would say how many West Point students that if you were to walk onto the campus and say, are you aware of these 12 core virtues, you would be shocked how many UCLA athletes I've met. Anytime I meet a UCLA athlete, we usually have one on the Ravens, and I'm in that locker room a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I will ask them, are you familiar with John Wooden's pyramid? And I am blown away by how few UCLA athletes have never heard of Wooden's pyramid. I figured it's like sort of fundamental. Like the minute you walk onto the campus, whether you're a gymnast or whether you're a track star or whether you're a football player or basketball, I would figure the first thing they would hand you would be a laminated wooden pyramid to put on your laptop or somewhere, above your bed to sort of align you, get your chakras in line with John Wooden, right? I mean, but to your point, some of these things get lost in translation. They stop being taught. I went to my high school football team went to the state championship. I figured everybody would know the alma mater. No one knew the alma mater, and I'm thinking, wow, these are things that get lost, right, along the way. Look, the Eagles fight song almost got lost in Philadelphia over a century ago, right?
Well, that's well put, and we should have grave concern, Nestor, about the lack of good, solid American history that's being taught in our junior high and our senior high schools around America, as well as on our college campuses. So that has inspired us to pursue a follow-up book to this one. A working title, Leadership Forged in Crisis. How our revolutionary heroes sustained an 18-year fight for freedom, founded the greatest nation on earth, and set a leadership example for us all.
By the way, Pat, I threw out Wooden's, and I had literally forgotten how many Wooden books you've written. I think the last time I had you on, we were talking about Coach Wooden and the 7 principles and all that stuff. But in putting the book ideas together, are you at a pace where you're really trying to do one a year? It feels like you are.
Well, it probably comes down to more of that, Nestor. That we've got a book coming out this fall called Lead Like Walt. And discover Walt Disney's magical approach to building successful organizations. That book is going to be out in October. And then sometime in the winter, Nestor, I've been working on this book for maybe 6-7 years. It's called Who Coached the Coaches? And I have asked hundreds of college and professional coaches, current and retired baseball managers, one question: who was the key person in you becoming a coach? And what is it that you took from them?
I did a mini version of that about 10 years ago with Baltimore people who had coached in Baltimore in some way, baseball, football, basketball, and I sat down with a ton of folks. It's amazing when you sit with a coach. I interviewed Earl Weaver. It was the last time he ever sat on camera, was with me before he passed, about what made him become a manager, And, and in those days, well, I wasn't a very good player, you know what I mean? Like, so it was the next thing. It kept me in the game, if you wanted to stay, you had to take it and learn leadership. And there weren't books on leadership. And a guy like you's made a whole life out of being a leader and being around leaders. Boy, the Walt Disney thing and the serendipity of a Philadelphia kid winding up down there in Orlando. My dad's 100th birthday was last week. He passed 28 years ago, but I celebrated his 100th birthday. And I found pictures of me with him in Disney World in 1978. And I always marvel at Walt Disney and literally building a city. The city that you claim is home for your life's work in basketball was just like a bunch of oranges this time last century, right? Like literally envisioning a city and then breathing it to life. Walt Disney's an incredible story.
Well, I've written 2 books about him already, Go for the Magic and How to Be Like Walt. But this one we're working on now, Nestor, is we're going to look at Walt through the narrow focus of leadership. Because Walt was a remarkable leader, and when you think about, he died in 1966, and the Disney organization has never been more healthy. It continues to grow around the world, and the reason has to be that Walt, as a leader, set that foundation to allow this company to keep expanding, growing, and touching billions of lives. He had to be a pretty good leader along the way. That would be my thought.
And by the way, it wasn't like William Randolph Hearst where it was all the big mystery, right? Like Walt's principles and all of it came to life through his employees and his vision, which was, otherworldly kind of vision. But more than that, there were no secrets, right? That was probably part of the magic was, here's how we're going to do it. Here's the blueprint. Here's the plan, literally in that way, and then tweaking that plan. There really are blueprints for every part of Walt Disney's vision, right?
Well, in this book, Nestor, we're going to focus, first of all, on Walt as a visionary. He saw the future before it got here. Secondly, he had the ability to communicate that vision effectively. Thirdly, we're going to talk about his people skills. He saw people's ability far beyond what they saw. And in many cases, he would move people around his organization because he saw something in them that they couldn't even have imagined. Fourth, we're gonna write about Walt's character. He was far from a perfect man, but his character was good. He was honest. He had integrity. He took responsibility. He had a strong work ethic. He persevered like crazy. And then we're going to do a chapter on his competence. To be a great leader, Nestor, you got to be good at what you do. You can have all the other stuff, but if you can't get results, leadership is always about results. And Walt was good at getting results. He knew, with all these ideas he had, but he knew what the public would pay for. That may have been his greatest gift.
Pat Williams joining us here, longtime executive in the NBA and a now happy Philadelphia Eagles fan and a Philadelphia kid. I know I've talked baseball with him in the past, as well as football and leadership, and John Wooden. The new book is Character Carved in Stone. I got it right here. The 12 core virtues of West Point that build leaders and produce success. And, of course, you can find this anywhere books are sold. And you could probably spend a long, long period of your life just reading the books of Pat Williams. Last thing for you, and I guess, in confusing leadership and winning and where we are, let's get on to the court here. There's no bigger story than LeBron James, right? I mean, the playoffs are going to come. There's going to be involvement. The teams are going to be involved, all that. But where the Lakers are and where LeBron is, and this Midas touch that he always had around him, as well as leaving a trail of coaches, teammates, all sorts of things in his wake. We're now getting into the second act, third act, wherever we are for LeBron. This has been a rough little part for the brand and for where he is right now, right? And for the Lakers.
Well, Nestor, let me just say this. Keep in mind, over these last few years, the Lakers have been among the 5 or 6 worst teams in the league, and always drafting high in the lottery. That's how Lonzo Ball and the Randall kid got there, and Ingram from Duke, and they were picking so high. So to expect LeBron at age 34 to suddenly put that group on his shoulders and lead them, it wasn't realistic. They have been riddled with injuries, including LeBron, and they're just not a great team.
Expectation's an incredible thing, isn't it? When you're lowering the bar, raising the bar in sports. I mean, your bar was a lot different with Penny and Shaq, and than it is in certain years. And we're going through that as Ravens fans here in Baltimore. Certainly going through that as Orioles fans. I know you follow all the sports. We lost 115 games here last year, and there's a whole rebuild going on. You're familiar with that in your sport as well. But managing expectations is probably the greatest gift for sports, because expecting a championship the minute he walked in, that probably was the problem, right?
To a large degree. The minute LeBron arrived, there was expectations off the charts. And I think everybody was intrigued with that, and certainly the TV networks were. My goodness. LeBron, and the Lakers have been featured, weekly, in some ways bi-weekly on national games, because everybody is drawn to watch LeBron. Well, it just has not worked. And the injuries, listen, LeBron's never been hurt until this year, and shut him down for a long time. That's never happened. So the Lakers off-season is going to be fascinating. There are all the rumors about free agency, and that let me put it this way, Nestor, the NBA postseason is the greatest. In mid-April or so, the playoffs start, and they run into June, and then we have the draft lottery. And then in late June, we have the draft, and July 1 starts the free agency. And 2 weeks later, we've got the Las Vegas Summer League, which goes on for several weeks, and it doesn't stop until August 1st. The NBA offseason is better than the regular season.
Especially for the executives. You don't have to play. But for this year, for the NBA, it really is crazy wide open, and more so than maybe at any point in my lifetime. Literally, I have no idea who's going to win this tournament, right?
Well, when you saw last night that Phoenix goes into Golden State and whipped them. Booker goes for 37, and the Warriors lost at home.
Well, that didn't happen 3 years ago or 4 years ago.
No. So out west, there is there's going to be a real playoff dogfight, and in the East, I was talking to a scout here Friday night before the game. He said the way it could end up in the East, the final 4 teams, Milwaukee, Toronto, Boston, and Philadelphia. And this scout said, I'm going to have reservations on my couch through the entire rounds with those 4 teams. He said, it's going to be that good.
Well, you guys are clawing along as well. So, certainly trying to get up the mountain and get in there, right?
Well, we have not seen the playoffs for a long time, but we're chucking away here, trying to make progress, and we're duking it out right now with Miami, our hated rival down south, and Charlotte. The 3 of us are fighting away for that last berth.
Well, Pat, I'm going to get down there to see you at some point, and I hope you get some playoff basketball in. And, I don't know the last time you went to Epcot, but anytime you want to hang out at Epcot with me, I'm ready to go, man.
Nestor, I will buy you a turkey leg, a turkey drumstick. That's what they feature at Epcot.
I want you to take me over to the Canadian stand and buy me some good Canadian beer, and we'll pick up some fish and chips. We'll have a couple of beverages. The sun will be out. The flowers will be beautiful. We'll go to the little Japanese thing there, have some sushi. I got it all figured out. Well, I'm going to eat my way through the park is what I'm going to do, Pat.
Nestor, it sounds like you've been here before. You know what you're doing.
Character Carved in Stone is the book. Pat Williams is the author. The 12 core virtues of West Point that builds leaders and produces success. Next time I get you on, we're going to talk more about Walt Disney. Okay, Pat?
Nestor, we'll do that in the fall. And as you pointed out, I send people to Amazon. Great way to order books, barnesandnoble.com. Or head to your bookstore. The book's out there, and I hope people really enjoy it, Nestor, and I always enjoy having a chance to chat with you.
Always a pleasure to have Pat Williams on. I didn't get any baseball conversation, or I didn't even get any Philadelphia. I didn't get any Bryce Harper in. Character Carved in Stone. Pat Williams, VP of the Orlando Magic, always making time and always writing cool books that I make me want to read them. How about that? Those are the best kind of books. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. Don't forget about the buyatoyota.com audio vault where all of our content lives. Go check it out. The kids call it podcasting. I'm Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST, Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.